Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Syaidul Anam. Now I'm standing right here to talk about the disaster mitigation. So I'm from English Department, the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education in the University Muhammadiyah of Mataram. So now I'm taking this video for the Pilmapres in LL Dikti. So we are talking about disaster mitigation, educative, creative learning in school for the students. So Indonesia is located in alongside or along of the, as we know as, Ring of Fire. Indonesia is located on the 3 continents. The first one is Indo-Australia continent. Indo-Australia continent from the south. And the second one is Eurasia. Eurasia continent from the north. And the third or the last one is Pacific continent. Pacific continents from the east. And also Indonesia has tropical climate. From those geographic and climate condition makes Indonesia has a high frequency of disaster such as volcano, earthquake, landslide, tsunami, flood, and hurricane. In the past 10 years, a lot of disaster was hit Indonesia. BNPB was released the total accident of disaster in Indonesia. In the past 10 years, based on BNPB, the disaster was happened 20,342 times, causing 11,352 people was dead. 100,064 and 772 was wounded. And the people who affected was 33.5 million. In 2016, the population of Indonesia is around 258 million. 1/3 of the population was child. The young generation should know about the disaster mitigation through the educative learning in school. So when we are talking about disaster mitigation, there are 2 kinds of approaches. The first one is structural approaches and the second one is non-structural approach. The structural approach is about to prevent the damage of disasters by build an earthquake resistant structure for buildings. And the second one is non-structural approach. And the second one is non-structural approach. Is an effort to prevent the disaster impact or damage, which is like non-structural approach. Is an effort to prevent the damage of the disaster or the impact of the disaster, which is like the education in school for the students about disaster itself and the mitigation. This approach is different from the structural approach because non-structural approach is an effort for the long period, because the non-structural approach is an effort for the long period of time, or we can say for the long terms. For the long terms, to prevent the disaster through the educative creative, or to prevent the damage of disaster through educative and creative activities in school. On structural approach. So this is an approach to prevent the disaster, to prevent the impact or the damage of disaster through the education in school for the students about the disaster and the mitigation itself. This approach is different from the structural approach because this is an effort for the long period of time, or we can say for the long terms, to prevent the disaster through the educative, creative learning activities in school. The learning activities could be the same or not. It depends on the situation. But if we are talking about educative and creative learning activities, it means that the learning activities should be more attractive because the student should be more prepared themselves, so the teacher should be attractive, so the students could be more attracted by the material or the learning activities itself. Educative and creative, which means that the learning material and the media should be fresh. The teacher should be performing creatively in using the learning media and the material. So the teacher should be perform creatively in using the media and to present the learning material to the students in school. So when we are talking about the media itself, the media should be more attractive than the commonly. So when we are talking about the creative and educative learning media, so we are talking about uncommonly or the new one or the fresh one. So when we are talking about the new media to the students in school, we are talking about which is that media is appropriate for the students or not. So we are using the new media to the schools, to the children, to the students. So we have to aware which kind of media which is appropriate for the students in school. So there's no limitation in the using of the media to teach the students about the disaster in school. So the teacher could be use any research of the materials, but we have to underline that the media should appropriate to the students. So the media is such as, the first is the using of a comic book. The first is the media is, and the example of the media is first the using of the comic book as the source for the first is the using of the comic book is about the disaster. The second one is short movie. The third one is recount text, and the last is the experience of the teacher and the student itself. So there will be an attractive interaction between the students and the teachers when they are in the class. So those previous explanations is all of the media that could be used. So from those explanations are kinds of media that could be used from those kinds of explanation that could be used by the teacher to explain what is disaster, how to prevent the disaster in school. So the purpose of this, the purpose of this paper is how to prevent the disasters itself. So when we are talking about the children in school, we are talking about how to prevent the disasters to the children. I mean, like, to teach the students how to prevent, to teach the students in school what is the disaster itself, how to prevent them, so we can decrease the damage or impact of the disasters itself. So we can prepare our young generation to be more aware about disaster. So as we know that now in Indonesia has already happened a lot of disaster. So I'm Syaidul Anam. Maybe that's all from me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.